Hey everybody, my name is Dominic Demore, and I want to thank you all for tuning in to the second, possibly third best thing you'll hear all week. We have a great show for you today that includes a top-notch film review done personally by me, Dominic Demore, as well as the results for last weekend's box office and an update on the box office showdown. Pretty sure it's the third different thing I've called it, like beatdown, showdown, IHB, something. We'll figure out a real title eventually.
We have a lot of different things that have different names.
Yeah. But this is the I've Had Better podcast, movies edition. Let's kick it off. James, what film are I going to be reviewing today?
All right. I like that.
Yeah.
Dominator will be reviewing Ghostbusters.
Jim was tied up with some, he was basically just cooking a lot of meat. And that is not a sexual innuendo. He was literally cooking large amounts of food for a Greek festival this weekend. So we'll let him off with a pass.
So kind.
All right, so Ghostbusters, the reboot, highly anticipated, highly disliked YouTube video of the year. It's a reboot. It follows similar beats to the original 1984 version, I think. This movie stars Leslie Jones, Kate McKinnon, Melissa McCarthy, Kristen Wiig, a whole bunch of other SNL alums, and Chris Hemsworth, Thor himself. Basic plot is the Ghostbusters kind of team up because they're all interested in the paranormal, and New York gets overtaken by some guy who is totally nondescript and nearly unnecessary, and the city gets overrun by ghosts. So the Ghostbusters have to come in and bust them. Ghost. With the busting.
Very clever. Nice play on words.
Well, technically I didn't do it. Plot-wise, there's not a whole lot you need to know, obviously. I kind of just went over it. I didn't hate this movie as much as I thought I was going to, but I also didn't love it. And judging by the box office results, I feel like everybody felt pretty similar. We'll start off with some of my positives, because there are a few. This is not a bad movie, by any sense of the word. The 3D was really good. Probably the best I've seen since Avatar. They did a really cool thing where, obviously, they have the proton packs and things like that. And when they were shooting them, they would go kind of off screen, and it felt like those proton beams were coming at you. Or some of the ghosts, like it starts off very early. You see it in the trailer, the scene where the ghost kind of goos all over Kristen Wiig. Part of me wasn't really paying attention at that moment, and like it made me jump because she does it, and it looks like the goo is going to hit you in the face. Yeah, so the 3D was great. They did a little bit too much CGI in the film, especially the big climactic battle, super CGI'd, but the 3D of it was very impressive. I don't normally recommend people see 3D. I personally don't mind it, but this one's not totally worth the extra $3 upcharge or whatever. Next positive, Leslie Jones. Totally did not expect for her to be a positive because I don't particularly find her funny on SNL. She was also in that movie Top 5 for Chris Rock. I did like her in that movie, but she was playing essentially a heightened version of herself, I think, so I didn't take too much credit for that or give her too much credit for that. She was the funniest part of the movie, hands down.
Wow, I'm thoroughly impressed.
Yeah, considering the 4 leads in this movie, I mean, you've got some pretty big comedic titans.
Yeah, definitely.
And for her to be the funniest of them all was impressive. She felt the most normal / least forced. Maybe it helps that she wasn't supposed to be a scientist. She was the down-to-earth one, so that maybe was a little easier. But overall, I was pretty impressed with her. I didn't laugh a whole lot through this movie, unfortunately. And when I did, it was for Leslie Jones. So, props to her. Other positives, the cast overall, it was well cast. And aside from a couple people that I'll talk about in a minute, but I blame that more on the director and the writers than the actor. Overall, they fit very well together. The chemistry was great between them all. They had great rapport. And I thought they all fit their roles very well. So, that's really nice. Oh, and then how they actually came together, like plot-wise, it made sense that these 3 scientists were like, oh, I want to find ghosts. And they all came together, and Leslie Jones joined in because she'd seen a ghost and stuff like that. So it came together very organically.
Was there any actors that were in the film that you didn't know about?
know about, as in
Like for Central Intelligence, I didn't know Jason Bateman was in the film.
well, might as well jump into our negatives. Well, my negatives at this point.
Okay.
They did cameos throughout of the original Ghostbusters and things like that. So I knew Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, and Sigourney Weaver were going to be in. And Ernie Hudson, I know he was going to be in it. So those weren't exactly unexpected. How they were peppered in was a bit unexpected, particularly Sigourney Weaver. And if you hadn't figured it out by now, spoilers for all of this. I try to avoid them as best as I can, but I'll give you guys a heads up. Sigourney Weaver's cameo wasn't even in the movie. She was in the credits. Yeah. Like, it was super weird. It was like, and I get why they didn't put it in, because it felt very forced and everything, just like all of these cameos did, but it was like, oh. But I mean, as far as casting, I mean, like, Andy Garcia was pretty good. He plays the mayor of New York City. I wasn't expecting him to be in this film, but
I love Andy Garcia.
yeah, he was solid. There's a great joke about Jaws in it, so keep your ears open for that. Some of the other negatives. This solidified for me that Melissa McCarthy is not nearly as funny when she's not allowed to swear. Like, you could feel at times when she's kind of doing that rambling dialogue where she's doing that, like, make-up swear word things, like, oh, you scruffy little... Well, this is a Star Wars one. Scruffy little nerf herder.
Yeah.
But, like, oh, you... Jibba jabba jab.
Yeah, I think she's at her best when she's just able to scream instead of
Pretty much.
not scream the F word.
Yeah, so it's just tough for her. And maybe it's just because she's so great when she's allowed to do that it makes her normal performances kind of die down for me. But utterly, I don't think I laughed at her a single time in this entire movie. Kate McKinnon, worst part of this movie. Absolute worst. Leslie Jones might have been the best. Kate McKinnon was the worst. Her character was just so over the top and on all the time that it made it honestly distracting.
Yeah.
And it's okay if you are on. Like, you're over the top and you are extremely goofy and you never take anything seriously in a movie. But when you have as much screen time as she does and you're so crucial to the plot, every scene, she's never normal. Like, she never has a moment where it's like, oh, we should go get coffee. It's always like, yeah. And I'm making faces right now, but it's a podcast. One day when we get video, that'll make much more sense. But
She's like doing her Ellen, but way over the top.
no, not even that. Like, I wouldn't even say it's her doing Ellen. I would say it's her doing... I'm going to go Muppets on this thing. Okay, so there's the two scientists in the Muppets, right? There's Beaker, the one who only does the beeps, and then there's the other one. And then there's Animal, the drummer from the band in the Muppets. If you combine the one scientist that talks and Animal, you would have what Kate McKinnon was in this movie.
Bit of a stretch.
Yeah. It was, and
But it
that's the
works.
best I can do. Like, when you see this movie, you will totally understand that reference.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she was just really bad. She just didn't feel like she fit in the movie. She was in a different one. Same thing with Chris Hemsworth. And Chris Hemsworth, he's got a knack for comedy. But it felt like in this movie, he played the overly stupid secretary, essentially. Like, and I don't think he has a normal line in the movie. Like, there's nothing normal about this guy. And the most far-fetched thing in the movie is the fact that they couldn't afford to fire the awful secretary. In a movie with ghosts, that is the most unbelievable thing. It was also super weird. Like, it felt like they were trying to give the least comedically talented actor all of the comedic lines.
So it just felt forced.
It did. So, and like I said, he was just always on and always so stupid. And it was funny for the first, like, couple of minutes. But every scene he's in up until nearly the end, he's a dimwit. Like, there's no other way to explain him. And they just keep doing it over and over again.
Do you think they should have cast someone else?
No. They just should have wrote him better. Like, much like Kate McKinnon, or he should have been directed better. And, like, you need to be grounded in order, if you're going to go that zany. Like, otherwise you're a one-dimensional And granted, it's a comedy, and you always get one-dimensional characters, but it was so bad.
Mm-hmm.
The villain also was horrible. He was played by Neil Casey, who apparently is on Saturday Night Live too. I don't know that I've ever seen him. Granted, I don't watch a whole lot of Saturday Night Live, but to my knowledge, he's never made it into one of the viral videos, so he's apparently not that funny, and he was useless in this movie. He was the big bad guy, but he's one of those big bad guys you're like, oh, I really don't want him to be the bad guy. And not because you like him, just because, like, oh, he's so bland. And they just kept cutting back to him, and I'm pretty sure they made the same 3 jokes about him being weird and a loner in like 4 different scenes. So,
Did it feel long?
Yes, it felt long. Do you know what the runtime was on this movie?
Hour 56.
Yeah, it felt every minute of that. Like, I kept wondering when, not exactly when it was going to end, but like, wow, like, this is still going, huh? So,
yeah, I feel like movies now tend to be at least 2 hours.
Oh, yeah.
For some reason. And earlier, like, movies in the 80s or early 90s were definitely shorter.
Oh, yeah. And well, it also helps that with the invention of digital film nowadays, you can shoot all day and not worry about it. Like, back in the 90s, everything was shot on film, and film was expensive as shit.
Yeah.
Like, so if you didn't get something in 3 to 4 takes, you weren't getting it.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you were paying $500 for another roll of film.
Was it flammable back then, too?
I believe so. Back to the cameos. They were all forced. The most outrageous of them all for me was the Bill Murray cameo. He plays this famous debunker of, like, so he doesn't believe the ghost and he doesn't believe in the Ghostbusters. And when he first showed up, it was like, okay, nice, they got him in for his cameo. And then he comes back for no reason to the Ghostbusters, not hangout, office, I guess you want to call it.
Their lab.
Yeah, and there was no reason for this. Like, it doesn't make sense in the movie. There's like no reason for the characters to act the way they do. To me, it felt like Bill Murray's like, yeah, I'm not going to be in this movie unless you give me double the screen time of all the other characters who are cameos. Because that's what it felt like. And last but not least, this never should have been a reboot. It should have been a sequel. There's easily so many mistakes in this movie that I hated that would have been forgiven if they just made it a sequel. The cameos wouldn't have felt so forced. They wouldn't have had to kind of shoehorn in references. The logo, the famous logo of the Ghostbusters, spoilers again, it gets, some graffiti artist paints it on the wall of a subway, and Kate McKinnon walks by and is like, doesn't that look like a good logo? Snip. And takes a picture of it, and it becomes their logo. And it just was like, obviously we know that the picture is, like, you didn't need that in there.
Yeah.
Or the idea of them being the Ghostbusters and all that, it just felt super forced. So, that was my biggest thing. If they would have made it a sequel, I probably would have liked this movie so much more.
Yeah, they could have easily done that too.
Yeah. Alright, so if there's nothing else, James, to contribute. No? Nothing?
Good.
I didn't think so. I'm going to give my rating now. After a long and hard-fought battle within myself, I decided to give this movie a 4.4 out of 10 apples. It was not awful. It's not the worst movie I've seen this year. And to be honest, my 4.4 is probably a little harsh. I probably could go up to like a 5.4 if I really wanted to. But for me, there's nothing to hold on to. Like, I probably wouldn't watch this movie at home. Like, the 3D was great. And that kind of saved the movie for me in the theater. But taking it home, obviously I don't own a 3D TV because I'm not that idiot who decided to invest in that technology. That's my rating. What did you guys think of the film if you saw it this weekend? Did you like the film? Let us know in the comment section below or hit us up on Twitter at IHB Podcast. Next up, when Jim can actually contribute, we have the box office battle. Although I probably prefer if he didn't contribute that much. This is a weekly competition that we have for bragging rights. It's between two friends, and we are slowly backing away from that. It's basically to prove which one knows more than the other guy about the box office and who can predict it best. The way the game works is each week James and I predict the top 5 order at the box office. Whoever gets the closest to the correct gets the point for the week.
Why don't you tell everyone who won again?
You did. You want to get... We're going to get into this in a minute. Oh, it's the closest battle we've ever had, and it was insane.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, so...
And I think the only reason I got a push out of that is because of the difference in theaters.
It was. I mean, and you called it. That was your reasoning, so all props to you. Did you go 5 for 5?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure did. The results of last week's box office are as follows. Holding on to the top spot with a slightly over 51% drop from last week was The Secret Life of Pets, earning an additional $50.5 million and crossing the $200 million domestic mark. Debuting in second place was Dominic's meh review of Ghostbusters Reboot, bringing in $46 million against a $154 million budget. The real battle this week was for the third spot, as Legend of Tarzan beat out Finding Dory $11.1 million to $11 million, and rounding out the top 5 was Mike and Dave Need Wedding Dates, taking home $7.5 million.
I feel like Apollo Creed in Rocky 3, when he's talking, he's like, "You beat me by 1 second. 1 second. That's a very hard thing for a man like me to accept."
Sure is.
$100,000 at the box office. You beat me by. I was looking at these, I'm like, is there any way I can manipulate this data to where I'll come out on top?
Yeah, because if you look at Box Office Mojo, it's like 200,000.
Yeah. Interesting week. Secret Life of Pets, like we talked about, dropped off. Little over 51%. It was like 51.3. So, solid return. Ghostbusters, obviously, that was the big topic. 46 million. It sounds like a good number. And it is an okay number. Like, that's nothing to really be ashamed of. But I read an article on Yahoo where some of the people who look at the budgets of films and they create algorithms that say, okay, if your budget is this much, factoring in at least this much for marketing and what you're going to have to do in international markets, Ghostbusters should have been around like 60 million in order to really make a solid push and be considered like a success at the box office. Because comedy doesn't really travel well overseas usually. Like you look at something like Mike and Dave, that movie's up to like 38 million globally, and like 33 or 31 of that is from the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So comedies don't do well outside of the U.S. for the most part. So Ghostbusters, which is a comedy, it'll probably do better than Mike and Dave, obviously, overseas.
More well-known.
But it's also not going to be available in China. Did you hear about this?
No.
Yeah, China has rules/laws where their government can ban movies from being shown if they deal too much with like spiritual, or they can basically inspire cult activity, or they make things like, oh yes, ghosts are real. Movies can get banned from China, and Ghostbusters did, so they're going to lose out on money there.
Yeah, I don't think China is the only country that does that either.
No, but China now is like one of those biggest markets. Yeah, like now movies are literally made to see how they can do in China, as we've seen in the past couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So Ghostbusters got a rough road, especially with next week. A couple of big movies. Maybe not Ice Age, but Ice Age is going to pull away a couple at least. And then you have Star Trek Beyond. That's going to pull away. So what kind of a drop are we going to see from week 1 to week 2 for Ghostbusters?
Yeah. It'll be interesting.
Yeah. A couple other news. Tarzan crossed $100 million domestically. Solid number. But it's only got 91 from foreign markets right now. The legs on it is impressive. I think this is third week and it made 11 million in its third week. That's positive. And it'll probably do a decent number next week, probably around like 6 or 7 maybe. But it's got a $180 million budget, not including marketing.
Yeah, it's just over the budget right now.
Yeah, so that's pretty crazy. Shows you how important budget control is when you're making a movie. They could learn something from The Purge, which I have a review of up now on www.ihbpodcast.com. As a matter of fact, you can catch the reviews for most of these films up at www.ihbpodcast.com.
He's also doing the guns as he says that.
Got to shoot off the guns every once in a while. Finding Dory, still a monster. 721 worldwide, 445 domestically. Highest grossing domestic film of the year. Probably going to stay that way, realistically. No, Star Trek's definitely not going to beat it. And the only thing left maybe is Fantastic Beasts or Rogue One. But even those, I don't see them getting to the $500 million mark domestically. And then, like I said, Mike and Dave, $38 million global, $33 million budget. It doesn't sound great right now, but if it can pull out another 3 weeks of like $3 to $5 million, this movie's going to make money. And on something like that, that's all the studio wants. Like, get us out of the red into the black, and we're happy.
Yeah, especially with two, not so big name comedians.
Mm-hmm, for the most part.
Zac Efron's definitely not.
Yeah, no.
He's not there yet. And
yeah, Adam Devine's straight out of TV.
Yeah. So, if they can at least get out of the red, like you said, that'd be good for them.
This is probably the first movie that Adam Devine has led, right? Arguably Zac Efron's the true lead, but
yeah,
he's a co-lead
for sure.
Yeah, so definitely interesting. Now it's time for the dreaded and hated and predictions portion. James, since you won, how about you go first? Impress us with your movie knowledge.
All right. This is a bit of a struggle again.
It's a tough week.
Another tough week.
A lot of movies.
Yeah. I was torn between going Ice Age and Star Trek at number 1. The only reason I'm going to pick Ice Age is because it has more theaters.
How many more?
300 more.
Oh.
It's a decent number. So Ice Age at 1, and then I'm going to go Star Trek at 2, and I really don't know what to do with the next one. It's either Lights Out or Ghostbusters.
Really?
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm going with it. Just because I think if Secret Life of Pets or if Ice Age is going to steal some of Secret Life of Pets.
Makes sense. It's a solid theory.
Viewership. All right, so let's go Lights Out at 3. And then Ghostbusters at 4, Life of Pets at 5.
Nice. All right.
I'm scared. I might lose my streak.
On
this one.
That is a tough one. My list isn't that far off of yours, to be honest. It's quite different, but it's not way off. Like I'm going Star Trek at number 1.
Okay. Understandable.
The last Ice Age opened to 46. I think there's enough competition to where that number's going down no matter what, because there's Secret Life of Pets out, there's still Dory out. So I don't think it's going to get to 46, and also I think the interest in these movies is dying down a little bit. So I don't think it's going to get to 46. I think Star Trek will. I think it'll have a good weekend. If it doesn't, it's a bomb.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. So I think Star Trek comes in number 1. Ice Age then falls to 2. I have Lights Out 3, but to be honest, I would not be surprised if this ends up at 5, because in both of our scenarios, we have a $20 million movie at 5. Because there's no way Ghostbusters, for me, spoilers, and Secret Life of Pets for you, drops to under 18 million.
Yeah.
Because that's like a 60% drop off for you. That's over a 50% drop off for me.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting. Secret Life of Pets, I'm going to go number 4. Reasons I just said. It dropped off 50 even this weekend. If it drops off 55, 60, we're still looking at that early 20s range. And then finally, I'm going to round it out with Ghostbusters. Probably around I think it's going to be around 20 million. Could be a little less. And if that's so, the studio is going to be in trouble.
Good picks. I like Star Trek at number 1 after looking at what Star Trek 1 and 2 did in their opening weekend.
What did number 2 do?
About 70 million each.
About 70?
Yeah, I think the first one was 75, and the second one was 70.
Yeah, I mean...
But I know a lot of people didn't like the trailer.
A lot of people didn't like the trailer. A lot of people didn't like Into Darkness. And it's another sequel, and this has been the year of sequels, so you never know. We've had good box office the last couple weeks, but remember before that, they were down.
Yep.
They were way down. So,
And the theater number is about the same for the first and second one. About 3,800.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. Let us know what your guys' top 5 are. You can send us an email to what, James?
IHBpodcast@gmail.com.
Boom. Shakalaka. We didn't even practice that. Unless you count the previous 33 episodes.
Nope, that doesn't count as practice.
So, that was our show for today. I want to thank you all for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, please like it in that little thumbs up area right down there if you're watching on YouTube. And subscribe to us on YouTube. Even if you're not watching on YouTube, have I said YouTube enough?
No.
Good, because I'm going to say it again. Subscribe to us on YouTube with that is the I've Had Better Podcast Network. Also, you can follow us on Twitter, which I just mentioned, at IHB Podcast. And on Facebook, go like the I've Had Better Podcast page. James, tell all the gushing tweener fans out there who love you where to find you.
There's so many of them.
There are.
There's too many to count.
It's odd.
Whatever, I'll take it. It feels pretty good. You can follow me on Twitter at @the_Kaiser_Soze or on Facebook as Jimmy Langos. And check out the website, even though I'm pretty sure you just said it. And then subscribe to and comment and rate our iTunes.
Yep. And you can find that by just searching IHB Movies, IHB Podcast, I've Had Better Podcast, any combination of those, or even I'm pretty sure our own names will pop up if you do it.
Interesting.
Yeah. As always, I am Dominic Damore. You can follow me on Twitter while Jimmy's Googling himself in the corner, at Dom Damore, or on Facebook at Dominic Damore. How's the show today, James?
We've definitely had better.
Good night, everybody.